I wasn't supposed to get paid, but this lady on an electric wheelchair scooter thing came up to me after I sang. She said, "Honey, I don't know a single word what you just said, but it sounded great." She handed me $2.
This is Champagne is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to be a part of the Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Welcome to Champagne is Also a Band podcast. Today I have Emily Antonocci, and Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So we're going to be listening today to your song Melt off of the EP Living Room EP?
Yeah.
Do you say it all together as Living Room EP?
The Living Room EP.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I would just should have said today we're going to be listening to Melt off of Living Room EP. Or
you could be like Emily's debut EP, Living Room, if you want to do that.
Okay.
Up to you. Live your dreams.
Okay. We're going to be listening to Melt off of Emily's debut EP, Living Room EP.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Anyway, so without further ado, let's listen to the song.
April felt like forever. Somehow I carried you into May. I thought we'd swim through June, and come July, I'd see you again. You and I lived and died, but you left a coffee stain on my nightstand. You never touched my sheets, but all day you wished you were in them. Ooh, did I make you melt? Ooh, not calling you out, but baby, move on quickly. Ooh, was I just a crutch? Was it me or the fantasy you daydreamed about so much? Impulse, nicotine or spontaneity. Your heart inked on your sleeve. You wish your hands were all over me. You and I lived and died, and honeybee, now I'm thriving. Found my new cup of tea, and it steeps where cold coffee used to be. Ooh, did I make you melt? Ooh, not calling you out, but baby, move on quickly. Ooh, was I just a crutch? Was it me or the fantasy you daydreamed about so much? Taste in music is delicious, and I miss saying good morning, good night. You were right. If it wasn't for the distance on my train back home, I wouldn't have cried. Ooh, did I make you melt? Ooh, not not calling you out, but baby, move on quickly. Ooh, was I just a crutch? Was it me or the fantasy you daydreamed about? So, did I make you melt? Not calling you out, but baby, move on quickly. Was I just a crutch? Was it me or the fantasy you daydreamed about? So, did I make you melt? Not calling you out, but baby, move on quickly. Was I just a crutch? Was it me or the fantasy you daydreamed about so much?
Welcome back. Emily, my first and favorite question to always ask is, what came first? Was it the words or was it the music?
Ooh, I suppose the music, but they were very closely, like, their births were neck and neck.
Okay.
They were right next to each other. My usual writing process is I will write out like a block of text, a stream of consciousness, the things I'm feeling, and then find a chord progression that I like, and then start writing the actual like lyrics. So
okay,
they're twins, I guess.
The first part of the music was that I like to call this like the anticipation motif. I don't know why, because it just the way that it goes is it has, you know, the few chords on the ukulele going up, and then it just pauses, and which makes me always think of like getting excited and then just like, you know. So was that the first part that you started playing on, or were like you did it on the ukulele is what I'm asking too, and that came from that. How did that come about?
So I always write my songs on ukulele. I think I'm yet to write a song like without it. Just started messing around with the chords, and strumming just didn't sound right, and I knew that, like, I don't know, usually I'm not great with arrangements. I leave that part to Cami most of the time, because Cami Proctor of the Blank Stares, they do my arrangements for me. Usually I'm like, oh, that'll come later, and it'll be great and sound very full and delicious, as it always does. This song is usually going to be played with more things around it, and so I was like, it's going to have a really basic ukulele part.
How did you come up with it might have just happened, but when you overlaid the lyrics, the melody, there's that syncopation between what's happening with the ukulele and your voice. How did that come about?
I wish I had, like, words to describe it other than, like, it just did.
Okay.
I don't know, like, I feel like I'm so cliche, but I'm just like, it just kind of flowed, you know? Like, it just came out of me, it happened. But that's kind of, like, what usually does happen. I wish I could describe it, but I usually cannot.
I'm just curious, when you ended up getting this down and recorded, I believe you had been playing it live or in front of other people for some time. So there's a few things that I was curious if they came about because of playing this live. You've got claps going on. You've got like the crowd singing at the end, and then you also have the crowd yells, "She was a barista." And I'm wondering if that was that something that happened in the course of performing that live, or did that just happen? I mean, I guess organically is the right word, but did that just happen as you performed it and learned those things, or was it something that you always had?
So I think the claps and the crowd singing, that was a Cami Proctor thing. That was something they added later, which, I don't know, I love. It's very, like, Dodie-esque in my mind. The British ukulele singer, Dodie. She's lovely. One of my biggest inspirations. They always remind me of, like, Dodie songs. And so I was excited to hear that addition in the demo version. But the "She was a barista" has a bit of a tale behind it. The song is about my love story with a barista. I was at my favorite music festival, Wander Down Music Festival. It is put on by the Way Down Wanderers. They're a Peoria-based band, and they're lovely. They have a bunch of little workshops and open mics throughout the weekend, and Cami and I were at one of them, and I was playing the song. It was relatively fresh. I think it was in the first few months of me, like, having the song out and, like, playing it out. It was just me and the ukulele, so it was like, dun, 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 and there was a lot of kind of quiet space in between, and so I was like, okay, I just made a lot of coffee and tea references. Like, I feel like they might need just if they haven't gotten it yet, like they need an explanation. So
Right.
found my new cup of tea and it steeps where cold coffee used to be. And then I just said she was a barista. And then that evolved into, in the like studio arrangement, like the crowd yelling, since we had the crowd later on as well.
I believe that when I saw you play at Nola's, which used to be Blackbird, pretty much everybody in the crowd was already familiar with that and did shout she was a barista. So that's part of where I was thinking that might have just come from. Let's dive into the lyrics. This song, and this is the part where I always kind of feel like I put myself out on the edge here because, you know, this is me interpreting it based upon my worldview and those kind of things. I almost feel like, although it implies that you may have been with this person, to me, it feels more like that this is just fantasy, that you're getting this impression of kind of that missed opportunity and like having that interaction. And then, well, what would that have been like? But then this was all about that sometimes the fantasy is so much better than reality. So, that sometimes why not just exist in fantasy for a while? That's what, when I listen to it, that's what I imagine. I'm just kind of curious, like, what precipitated these words?
I'll give you the Spark Notes version of it. I went on a spring break trip to an undisclosed location, and I met a gorgeous barista. And at first I was like, they're at work, like, I'm not about to get her number or her, like, details. She's on the job. But one of my friends was like, no, you should do it. Go for it. So I did. And then we were just talking nonstop. The next day I was leaving. Classic tale. And so I, like, saw her before I left. It was very romantic. We, walked around with, like, my friend group of high schoolers. I was also in high school. It was an interesting situation. But then I left the undisclosed location. We were constantly speaking. It was so much attention. I was loving it. I was freshly 18 and thriving. But then reality set in, and I was like, okay, this person lives very far away, and I am not a person who likes to deal in maybes, especially when it comes to, like, relationships. I'm big on, like, just clear communication. People can only get hurt if you're just dancing around boundaries and goals. It got to a point where I was like, is this going to happen? And she was like, we just live so far away from each other. I was mourning that relationship. I don't know. I was the most confident I had ever felt when writing this song. Like, this was fun and flirty, but I'm making the choice to cut it off because it's no longer, like, good for me or what I want. And so, you know, the little, you wish your hands were all over me, or you never touched my sheets, but all day you wished you were in them. You know, just a little spicy, like, gotcha.
Let's go back to the recording of this EP and more specifically this song. There's some really cool things, and there's this sense of, like, a duet between, like, the ukulele and the guitar. There's kind of this call and response in some parts, and I felt like the guitar and the ukulele were, like, representing their own kind of relationship in a way too. Was that an arrangement that you did for the guitar and the ukulele, or was that, like, brought in during the recording process?
So the process for this project was, I wrote the songs over the course of a few years. These were just, like, the things I felt most confident in up to that point, and then sent the vocals and the ukulele to Cammie, and then Cammie made the arrangements. Other than the vocals and the uke, like, lyrics and chords, that was on me, and then Cammie took it and just ran with it. Their ability to transform emotion into sound is, like, nothing I've ever heard before. I mean, I'm a little biased, but, like, it's incredible. And so I guess the ukulele guitar duet kind of thing, it's a nice nod to, like, our friendship and how, like, Cammie's in my live band. It's interesting because for all the songs on the EP, like, Cammie saw the situations that inspired those things. And so, I don't know. It's kind of like, I'm the ukulele and Cammie's the guitar, and we're just kind of chatting about, like, what went down.
I guess I was kind of thinking about it as you were the ukulele and that other person was the guitar. Like, there's parts where you complement each other and you're playing at the same time, but other parts where you're having your own voice separate from the other. And I thought that kind of met that kind of the overall metaphor or allegory of whichever one's the correct one.
Both.
It matched that idea of like, this could have worked, but you're still two separate people.
Yeah.
And then you made the decision that just wasn't going to work. That's the feeling I got between those two. But of course the bass was tight, I have to say. So I know that was Cami, but
oh yeah. I think that's what is so fun. Like I hadn't heard that interpretation before, like that you just brought to the table. And I guess I never really thought too hard into it. But yeah, when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh yes, that's just a lot of the arrangements, or like parts of the arrangement ideas came from playing live, and that's probably going to be a thing for all of my future projects too. I usually end up playing my songs live quite a bit before recording them, and so it's nice to see that evolution happen. Maybe
this is a total side tangent, but so you sent the ukulele and the vocals to Cami. In that process, in the actual recording process, did you struggle to get the same energy from the live performance that you do to get that into a recording that you could then know that was going to be? Because I feel like if you did that live and recorded it, it would be easier. I'm not saying it doesn't have that energy. I'm saying it would be easier to have that energy because, one, you've got a whole band behind you, and it's like, I don't know, you don't feel alone. But I maybe you're so used to performing by yourself that doesn't even come into question. But I was just curious how that process worked with you recording these by yourself, just you and the ukulele. Was that kind of a
I don't know. I feel like kind of a bit of the reverse has been happening where we'll be recording things in the studio and I'm like, okay, this is so cool. I love it. And then part of my mind is like, how are we going to reproduce this in a live setting? Because when we're live, like the most people we've had so far is me on ukulele and vocals, Cami on guitar or bass and backup vocals, and then Abby Haste, the drummer of the Blank Stares, on drums. And so, oh yes, and Cami will also play melodica from time to time. It's been interesting because there's so much energy in both the studio and in the live performances. Because my producer, Connor Billard, he is one of the most interesting humans I've ever come across. And so a lot of the like synth parts on the recorded stuff are like his work, like a collaboration between Cami and Connor to get those to happen. Whatever energy it is, some type of good, funky energy is going to be happening in the studio. And that will like translate into the recording. I feel like Emily Live and Emily on your favorite streaming service, they have like different accents, different flavors, but it's the same bass.
I always like to point out my favorite part. I gotta say that, I mean, actually there's a few that I really, really like, and it's the lyrical parts. And I mean, I feel like we should have talked a little bit more about the lyrics, but the first verse felt very pandemic to me for some reason.
Oh yeah.
You know? Just like April felt like forever, and somehow I carried you into May, and like, you know, that's my mental state over the last year, thinking about how, you know, time, what does that even mean? But then it felt like it turns, and now all of a sudden it's a different kind of story again.
Yeah. The funny thing is that it wasn't written during the pandemic. It was about the year prior. So I would, if I had stayed in college, I'd be a sophomore in college, but I wrote that the summer before my freshman year of college. So summer 2019, surprisingly not the pandemic spring into summer into year-long extravaganza.
You lived and died, a honeybee, now I'm thriving, found my new cup of tea of sleeps, where cold coffee used to be. I feel like that picks up that energy. But maybe it's because you get the sense that there's like a crowd there as well. It's hard. There's a lot of really cool parts, especially when that bass drops in the first, like for the first chorus, like when it just hits you. And then there's that chorus outro where the bass is just doing like this building kind of driving sense, and then it drops back into the bass from the original chorus. It revitalizes itself. So I don't know. I'm kind of a fan of the bass on this. So
amazing. I'm so glad.
Yeah, so do you have a favorite part in this song?
I think the She Was a Barista is always fun live. It's a fun reminder of like, I don't know, when friends are there and like friends know the song. Or sometimes like people who I've never met, very rarely, but like it happens. Well, people who I have never met will be yelling She Was a Barista. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I feel like Hannah Montana. I love that part live, especially. At the time that I wrote it, it was the strongest song lyrically I had ever written up to that point. I think I've been getting better and better, but at the time I was like, wow, this is the best I've done so far.
I was going to say there was something very catchy about, I mean, just
Thank
the way
you.
that it's wonderfully melodic, and there's because of that anticipation, I keep calling it the anticipation line, a motif. It's like you already have this really cool play between what you're doing with the ukulele and then your voice jumping in and out in between the pauses, so to speak. There's something about that is very earwormy, and I mean that in like the greatest sense, not the oh gosh that it won't leave my head. It was interesting because I believe I heard that the first time on one of the Espresso open mics.
Oh yeah,
that Emily puts on with Jake. No, I just remember thinking that was so, I don't know, so catchy, and when you were like Melt, I want to do Melt, I was like, okay, good. That's Why did you pick this as your favorite song?
I think of my music that's on streaming platforms, I wanted to give you one that like we could share in its like final form. It's so fun. Like I was pretty sad when I wrote it. Like I was sad mourning that relationship. Looking back on it, I'm like, wow, like she was having a hard time. but like, I don't know, as an 18-year-old was able to recognize what I needed and what was good for me and what wasn't, and act accordingly, which I, looking back, am like very proud of myself for doing. And so, yeah, that's why I chose that one.
It just fascinates me is that I don't hear this as like a sad song by any means, but I can understand, having been through that situation, that you would interpret it that way. So do you still see it as a sad song, or you just look back on the person that you were?
I think it's like looking back at the person I was, because in the bridge, it's like, if it wasn't for the distance on that train back home, I wouldn't have cried, because I was not even coming home from seeing the barista. I was on a train and thinking about the state of that relationship, and I was just like, it's dying. Like you and I lived and died, right? It's like this relationship, it's basically over. We just need to like call it quits. Looking back, like I was sad at the time, but it's such a fun song. Like certainly not exactly a sad song, but I think Bastille, the band, does this a lot. The like happy sounding sad songs. Absolutely love it. And not exactly one. It has hints of it, but I feel like more it's like a I'm the shit anthem. Like you really wish. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Exile on Main Street. Exile on Main Street, located in the old train station building at 100 North Chestnut Street in downtown Champaign, has been helping to build record collections since 2004. Carrying a wide array of new and used LPs, CDs, and video games. Exile on Main Street has something for just about any music enthusiast and old-school gaming devotee. Exile also hosts regular free live music shows on its stage, so be sure to check out their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for the up-to-date details on the next upcoming event. Open 7 days a week, they can be reached by phone at 217-398-MAIN. That's 217-398-6246. Welcome back. So, Emily, what is your favorite Champaign-Urbana venue?
I've had limited in-person experience with the Champaign music scene.
Okay.
So I did my freshman year at U of I. Mostly. I was a freshman during 2019 to 2020, where things just fell apart at the end. When we were in person, I was like I went to a few house shows. Those were pretty fun. I went and I saw, it was Mermaid Heaven, Beach Bunny, and Japanese Breakfast at the Canopy Club. It was a dream. It was so fun. Yeah, so awesome. And then I don't think I went to any other like ticketed concerts while I was in my short time living in Champaign, but I have played at Nola's Rock Bar. Played there. Oh gosh, time's so hard. I can never remember, because I'll be like, oh, like the other day, and then my mom will be like, actually, I think that was like 3 or 4 months ago.
Right.
Oh gosh, I played at Nola's. Bottom line, I did that, and it was wonderful.
Was Nola's the only place that you've played in town, or? Oh,
I played this festival. I was like part of the student talent competition at this festival. It was in, I think, September of 2019. It was a Find Your Grind University.
Okay.
They, it was interesting. They gave us critiques, which, like, love constructive criticism, can always get better. They gave them to us as a group. Like, in front of the group, you got your critiques. And I was horrified. My, like, gigging career, I've done maybe 5 gigs before, like, I don't know, summer 2020, like, gigs, other than, like, I don't know, playing in my high school, or like, I don't know, jamming with friends. I wasn't super experienced as a performing musician. Then I played this festival and they gave us critiques in front of everybody, and I was horrified. The people I met were super kind. The guy who ended up winning the competition was this kid, Azazel. He's incredible. He's a beatboxer, like a national champion in India. I'm obsessed with him. He's so cool. They were like, girly, like, you don't have much stage presence. It was just me and my ukulele, and I was like, Messy had just came out. Like, I was really nervous. It was my first time playing in Champaign, like, had just gotten to college. So I was just like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Because the other people were like, it was a full band, a few rappers, and then Azazel, who's like a beatboxer. So everybody else was pretty like hype. And then I was like the indie ukulele girl, and I was petrified. And I don't love when music's like a competition, because, so subjective. But overall, it's a fun story to tell. I was horrified in the moment, but looking back, I'm just like, that just wasn't my venue.
Was that here at the U of I?
Yeah, it was on the, Grange Grove, ? The lawn by the stadium. Trippy Red was the headliner. It was such a lineup. Yeah.
That wasn't your first performance in front of people, so
no, not ever.
Like, what was talk about your first time playing in front of people?
Oh wow, I took voice lessons as like a child, like 6-7 years old, until I was about 12, and so I do like recitals with that. My first time, I think there were like things in my like elementary school that I sang for, but the first time I remember singing not in my elementary school was at Six Flags St. Louis. I can't remember. My mom has this photo on Facebook. It's my partner's lock screen on his phone. I'm singing.
Yes.
I'm having a wonderful time singing every day from High School Musical 2. It was my first paid gig. I wasn't supposed to get paid, but this lady on an electric wheelchair scooter thing came up to me after I sang. She said, "Honey, I don't know a single word what you just said, but it sounded great." She handed me $2. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am a gigging musician now. And so, oh gosh, I must have been, I think it was 7 or 8. I think I literally gave it to my sister. I was like, I was so young. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. Do you want this?
I can't believe that.
So
you were 6, you said?
Oh,
ooh, that's some sibilance.
Between 6 and 8. I can't remember. Somewhere in that range.
Yeah, where do I go from there?
You were asking about the Champaign music scene, and then we've just gone everywhere else.
But that's great though, because it gives kind of a context to where you began and like
Six Flags St. Louis.
Six Flags St. Louis. But the thing is that a lot of the people that I feel tend to be comfortable on stage are ones that started out like pretty early and also maybe not perfectly untraumatically. Is that a good word? Like they learned early on, whoever it was, they learned earlier on that they survived this, this horrible, or I don't know if you could say horrible, but I mean, they survived this, performing in front of people, and it wasn't the end of the world. And I feel like those that either you really, really worked to get there, or you just had that experience and you just build up from there. I'm not sure exactly what my point was there, but it's just something that I've noticed is like when people talk about themselves, performing, earlier on and having these very like kind of cringeworthy of thing.
Oh yeah. I definitely did the whole like cringeworthy thing. I'm not saying that all high school speech is cringy. I'm just saying my performance was bad. I was on the high school speech team. I was in humorous interpretation, and I only did it because one of my friends was doing it. Every Saturday for like 3 months of the year for 2 years, would wake up, get on a freezing cold bus, drive to wherever they wanted to take us, and then do something that I essentially didn't really want to do for the whole day. And so I had plenty of experience, and I wasn't good as well. It was different when you like knew that you were good and you were going up there doing your piece and then sitting down and everybody's like, oh my gosh, they're so good. But I was bad. And so I would go up there feeling so anxious, force myself to do something I didn't really want to do, and then sit in my silly little chair and then wait out the silly little day. And so I feel like that helped me get my sillies out, like get the like anxiety out, because now I know no performance is gonna make me feel as bad as that anymore. Okay. Because now I'm like playing music and I really enjoy playing music, and acting was not for me.
Yeah, so the acting part of being someone that may not necessarily be genuine was not your thing, but to be genuine on stage as a musician was your thing. So I feel I always liked the idea of being in like the plays at school, but I was always on crew because I was like, I want to sing my songs. If I'm on a stage, I want to sing my songs, and I want to like be myself because I feel so strange. I feel like, I don't know, for some reason I felt embarrassed trying to be somebody else because I knew that I wasn't being genuine. I certainly prefer being a musician playing my original music over being someone else in front of a lot of people. I don't know why this is popping into my head, but lately I've had this weird, not obsession, but like I've just noticed it because of the pandemic and binging certain shows. Is there's so many, let's just say sci-fi shows. I'll give Star Trek as an example of it. It's not the main actors. It's always the background actors that I started noticing that like they're so self-aware that they're trying to act that you could just see it on their face, and it literally I start feeling embarrassed for them because
that was
I'm just
me.
Like, don't.
I was the background characters in Star Trek.
Nice.
in front of my peers. Yes.
I'm going to take a brief tact on here and let's talk a little bit about recently I saw on the socials that you mentioned that you're going to be doing some songwriting and ukulele lessons, and consulting with the Underground School of Sound. Yeah. So how did that come about?
I went to an open mic at the Red Barn in Peoria that Sarah Marie Dillard of Sarah and the Underground was hosting. And I met her. She was so lovely. And she was like, I like you. And so, and she's a fantastic champion of live music in Peoria. She's wonderful. We just kept like running into each other over the next few years. And then she booked me to play Ignite Peoria, which is a yearly event at the Civic Center. It's wonderful. But then we just kind of started getting closer, overseeing each other. And then I was like, hey, I would love to take lessons from you, because she is also a music educator. She teaches voice and ear training and music business and songwriting. So I started taking lessons from her, I think around this time last year, and it was great. I blame Sarah Marie Dillard and Cammie Proctor for my decision to drop out of college, because they were both like, you are always saying that music is what makes you happiest, and the thing that you are spending a lot of money to learn to do, you don't actually care about that much. Do we want to unpack that? And I was like, no, that's okay. I'll just ignore it. I will figure that out after I have my degree. I just need my degree. Wrong. I did not. But anyway, I decided to not go back to school and then kept on taking lessons with Sarah. And then recently I was like, I would love to be doing music full time. I had like a day job as a barista, and I was like, I'm not super happy. What could I be doing? So we were trying to think of things I could be doing. And she's like, join the teaching collective, like start teaching with me. So I will be doing that, music business / more on like the publishing and marketing side. I feel strange calling it lessons, but it's more like kind of consulting work. Right. And then ukulele and songwriting lessons through that teaching collective.
We talked earlier off air, so to speak, that you're doing it virtual as well as in person. So
anybody, anywhere.
I will try to put it in the notes if anyone's interested to go ahead and reach out. The thing that I've been ruminating a lot about through the pandemic and looking forward to, live shows coming back, and what does that mean, besides just the live shows, what does it mean to have a good music community? Mm-hmm. I guess the question that I ruminate on, and I also like to ask my guests, is like, to you, what makes a good music community? And then also, what does Champaign-Urbana, Peoria, what do they do well, and maybe even what could they do better?
I'll start answering the second question and work off of that. Does that work?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I started really getting into the Champaign music scene from my bedroom in Peoria, Illinois, doing the virtual open mics. I hadn't met a single person who I now consider like one of my close friends from that group of people until around this time last year. Sarah Marie Dillard, she sent me a text. She's like, hey, I found this like virtual open mic event. Like, I know you said you wanted to start playing out more, but like you can't really, like, this is a good opportunity. And so I was like, okay, like I saw Beach Bunny there, and I meant to go when I was on campus, but I was always too nervous. I didn't have anybody like that I knew would want to go with me to the open mics. And so I always chickened out because I didn't want to go alone. I would feel, I don't know, I get too nervous in new situations to just like go alone sometimes, especially when it's like big groups. So I went to my first virtual open mic and everyone was so kind. Everybody was so supportive, like in the chat, like while you're playing your song in the Zoom chat, it's just like so much love and support because it was already such like a close group of people because they'd been like seeing each other every Monday, and then they weren't allowed to do that anymore for good reason, but they couldn't do that anymore in person. My first thing of like a really good music community is like people who are just kind to each other and willing to bring other people in and just be kind to them. Because I feel like before I started getting into any live music scene, I was kind of nervous. I was like, I don't know, like, what if everybody already knows each other? What if they are afraid that I'm going to take up their space? Like, what if I'm taking up too much space, which is a thing that I still battle with now, the idea of, like, what if I'm taking up too much space in a music scene? But that's something I will work on in therapy. Yeah, open and welcoming and kind in any community. But I think especially in a music scene, like, for me, my lyrics are often lines from my diary. Like, it is some of the most like vulnerable stuff that I could be saying, and I share it on a stage oftentimes to strangers. Having people who are just gonna be like, even if it's not music that they'd put on their playlist, like while you're playing, being kind and respectful, like listening, I don't know, just giving their attention for the time being, like that's always an awesome thing to have. Other great you go ahead.
I was just thinking about how Champaign-Urbana and maybe they're not that unique in this whole process of doing things virtually, but I think it's just phenomenal that somehow you can still manage to have that sense of attention. Yeah. Maybe even like that people are like, you are worthy of my attention. Mm-hmm. You know, you're putting something artistic out into the universe, and I'm here to listen to that. And even that was able to be transmitted through the virtual realm, like D&D. I don't know. When I said that, I just thought D&D. That was the virtual realm. It's one of those things that I just found really fascinating through, this process. There were people that were doing their own thing, but it felt like that community still somehow managed to exist, which was like how it just kind of, it boggles your mind a little bit. Like, how is that possible? That's just something that I find incredibly remarkable. So anyway, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't take you off your...
Oh no, I love this. Okay. Champaign is really an incredible music scene. I've loved it so much. And I don't know, I was like, oh, I went to school there, but I don't anymore. And like, I live in Peoria, but still like, I don't know, I'm here like every other week. I found myself traveling here like to visit friends or play shows or like do podcast episodes like this. Like, I'm always here because they were still so welcoming, even though like I didn't originally feel like I was fully like part of it. They were like, no, you're definitely part of it. And so that's been awesome. But I think another important like pillar of a good music scene is like women and femmes being a big part of it, which I feel like Peoria and Champaign do really well. Yeah, I've been told of other small cities that aren't as welcoming, and so that makes me kind of nervous. But it's such a common trope of like, I guess, sound guys scare me quite a bit often. So, the cis white man who's like middle-aged and like kind of knows guitar, but they like know a lot about sound, and they're like, do you know what a chord is, sweetie? I'm like, yes, I do, sir. So I guess like that's very intimidating, and sadly, like, I have been condescended to. Is that a phrase?
I know exactly what you mean, though.
I've been talked down to by like that trope of sound guy like a few times in the past, and I'm like, if I didn't know that not all sound guys are like that, or sound people, like I would be long gone. I would probably just give up on performing, because like it feels so demeaning to like be nervous already, sharing something that you're vulnerable about, and like have some person you've never met be like treating you like you're garbage.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think having women and femmes be a big part of the music scene kind of helps tone that down a bit. I don't think anywhere is perfect yet. Like, I don't know, I'll see people from other places talking about it all the time. I think we might just be stuck with that trope of sound guy for the rest of this lifetime. But I don't know, it's important to me that like women are respected everywhere, the bare minimum, It's very nice and affirming to see that in a music scene.
Well, and I also think about, when that is so pervasive that it also discourages other people from even wanting to get into sound themselves, because there's already like a certain kind of gatekeeping about that too. And then, I mean, I guess I think back to, the girls' rock scene where they were looking for people to be doing recordings and things like that. And they wanted it to be, women and non-binary people that could come in and do it. But there's so little encouragement for people to get into it that aren't already in that I don't know. I feel like if there was a way to, I mean, girls rock is a good example, but if there were more ways to encourage that to be available. Even in the midst of the current coronavirus pandemic, the Jubilee Cafe is continuing to serve packaged, home-cooked meals free to all every Monday evening, 5 to 6:30 p.m. Meals are available for pickup outside the 6th Street door to the Community United Church of Christ in Champaign, Illinois, 805 South 6th Street. Jubilee Cafe's mission remains the same: feed hungry people by cooking healthy and delicious meals. We are open to anyone who cares to receive a meal. For information on the meal or how to volunteer, go to the Jubilee Cafe CUCC Facebook page or email us at jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. Welcome back. Emily, what is your favorite non-musical thing or things?
Oh, wow.
Oh, should I not have thrown in that things?
No, that's all right. I think, yeah, we'll figure it out. I'm a big fan of photography. Before I considered myself like a career musician, I thought that like music photography would be, I don't know, one of the ways I would make a living. And I think it still might be. I borrowed a camera from my high school audio-visual department and took photos when Cammie's band, The Blank Stares, opened up for Lovely the Band in Peoria. That was an awesome night. And then I guess this is like music adjacent. Does it count? Does music photography count?
Oh, no, it's even if photography of any form.
Okay,
it's
cool.
Just fun. I mean, it's really just so we can get just a little bit different perspective of who you are and what you do.
Cool.
So.
Music photography, love it. I've done a family shoot before. That was pretty cool. It was like my friend's Christmas present to her mom was just like a bunch of photos of the kids. So that was fun. And I've done some pet photography here and there. Just Cammie's puppy, Billy, take photos of her because she's just the cutest little thing. Other non-music things. During the pandemic, I got really into embroidery. I guess I did it at Jesus Camp. I did the little workshop they had. I made like a daisy and I was like, wow, I'm an artist. And then I didn't do it again for like years. And then I just started like embroidering on shirts. Like I just had these plain shirts in my closet. And I was like, well, I'm not doing anything else. And so, yeah, I would just like listen to podcasts, embroider shirts. And so that's been fun. I started like doing it for other people. Part of my trade with the Accidentals for them being on 2 of the songs on the EP was like they would do the tracks in exchange for embroidered shirts. And like next time they're on tour, like I'll probably take photos for them if like they want me to here and there. But I am playing a show with them in August and I really need to finish those shirts because the EP's been out for a few months now, and I feel like my idea for one of them is a bit too ambitious. I don't want to spoil it, but I think I need to go with something simpler, so I might be restarting one of them. So embroidery.
Yeah. So is that's not the same as cross stitch, right? It's a different type. Okay.
It's the same, needle and colored thread making a picture, but I guess the methods are different. Like cross stitch is like you're literally making like little X's into a picture.
Okay. Yeah.
But embroidery, you just kind of I think of it like sketching or drawing with thread.
Huh.
Yeah.
And then how did you kind of fall back into that? I mean, it sounds like there was quite a you were a lapsed embroiderer. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like, what brought you back into that, or were you just like, needle, thread?
I think, well, I had my Jesus Camp embroidered daisy up on, like, I have, like, twine with, like, clothespins, like, holding things up in my room. And so I think that was one of the things up there. I was like, I was kind of good at that. Like, I could do that again. And I was just like, I had already reorganized my whole room, like, April 2020. I don't know. I was like, I don't have the patience for like bread making. Like, I don't want to make something and let it sit. Like, I want things now. And so I was like, I could just embroider this now. I could just make a little picture on this shirt. And like, I don't know, it takes a while, but I'm not doing anything else. And I'm like, I can see the progress. But I feel like bread, you have to just like let it live its life for a bit. And I'm just like, I can't, I need to, I got to do something. And it's also nice because my brain, it's hard for me to just sit and like watch something like a movie or a TV show. Like I've finished maybe like 3 TV shows in my whole life just because I can't keep that whole universe in my head for like 10 seasons. Like that's a lot for me. And so listening to podcasts or like watching movies that I'm already like familiar with while doing my little embroidery, like that was a nice way to pass the time when we were all literally just trying to pass time until we could come out and do things like this again.
Yeah. And well, I'm super glad that you were able to like make this work. So, So Emily, thank you for being on the show, chatting with me about your song Melt and recording the Living Room EP, your experiences with the Champaign-Urbana music scene and what makes a good music scene, and telling me a little bit about the underground school of sound and like your favorite non-musical thing, photography and embroidery, and how you got into that. So thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was so much fun. Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Emily Antonocci reminding you great music is out there. Go find it where you live. Reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it wherever you live. That's a wrap.
You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good.
Sounds bigger on the inside.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I feel like Hannah Montana.